Hi YouTube, and welcome to part 2 of the steel-plated 973 build. As you can see, all the parts are now painted and they have dried up. I painted them yesterday and let them sit overnight, so they are all good and ready to be assembled. I have a long night ahead of me, so I'm just going to go right ahead and begin building. And the first things we will begin with is press fitting all the bearings that is missing on these parts. Now we need bearings on these idle wheels, and we need bearings on the main chassis, on the arms, and I believe there was more bearings missing. Yeah, we'll find out once we get going. So all the bearings are now in, and I think next I should solder some wires onto the motors and then install the running gear onto the chassis. Alright, so I just realized before I put the running gear on the main chassis, I have to mount up the end switches on this piece. So what I'm going to have to do now is put on the arms, temporarily put the arms on, and then figure out how much the lift and put on the end switches on here. So we're going to do that now, and then we're going to mount the chassis and running gear together. Alright, so I need this motor shaft to point downwards with the flat spot so I can mount up these couplers before I begin. This coupling should stay in the middle of the arms, like this you can see. Now I'm going to mark a line on the motor shaft, and then I'm going to cut a groove there. I'm going to show you. Right, so now we have a mark here, you can see. Alright, so now that I got the grooves cut, I can put on the arms and begin adjusting the end switches. You know what? I'll just put these weights in later. Before I put the set screws on these, I will keep them loose, so it's much easier to adjust the arms with. You gotta make sure that you can access the set screw. So I'm going to put it like this. Also, you gotta put these in a certain way. You see this lip here? This should be pointing upwards, because this is supposed to hit one of the end switches. So here you can see what I mean about not putting on the set screws. It's easy to adjust. Okay, so installing the end switches is pretty easy actually. When you put these arms down, they actually stop here because they hit up here. They make contact and can't go any lower. So you're gonna want to put this right before it maxes out. So you put it on max and put it back like this. Then you hold the arms with a finger and you adjust the end switch until you hear a click. There we go. And that's where we put the end switch. Now remember, you can't drill too far down before you hit the steel plate on the back here, so be careful. And now that we have the end switch on the way down, we can move the arms to the desired position up. And I'm going to zoom out the camera because the up position should be here. It's maxed out. Let's see here. Put it diagonally on the ground and you gotta hold it. Put it all the way up, but don't put the end switch here. You want to put it down again around here. So a good point of reference is when this lines up with the actuator mount on back. Oh yeah, this screw for the motor needs to come out. It's in the way for my end switch, so I'm just going to take it out and not use that one. So you hold this with a finger. It made a click right there. And that's the end switches. Here you can see, move it all the way to the bottom, hits the end switch, all the way to the top, hits the end switch. But we're not finished yet. We gotta put on some one-way diodes on both of these switches. Alright, so the end switches are now mounted up, and hopefully this is the correct way. We will test that right now. And I'm going to take off this arm right here, and I'll show you how I test them before I mount everything else up. So I have a battery here that I connect onto the motor wires, and the thing is, when you see this axle shaft spin, if it spins with the clock, it means that it's lifting, right? Like this. And when it's lifting or spinning with the clock, you can try to hit this switch and it should stop. If it continues to lift, you have to swap either the wires on here, or you can swap the direction of the one-way diode. The easiest step is probably to just swap the wires. We will see if this is the correct way. Let's first find out which way the motor spins. Alright, so it's lifting, which means if I, let's see here, put on the power on the motor, and then I try to click the, as you can see, yeah. So my motor is continuing to lift. which means I have to swap these wires around. I'm going to show you. My soldering isn't the best in the world, but so you have to swap these wires around. Take this one off. You just take this one off. You solder this one on this side. Come on. There we go. And then you solder this one to this side. All right. So let's do this test again, and now it should be the correct way. Perfect. You see? All right, so that's one way. Now let's check the other way. Let's reverse these wires. All right. So I have to swap these wires around too then. Okay, let's do that. All right, so it's working. Okay, so that's the end switches. They are now finished, and we can begin putting on these arms and putting this front chassis onto the main chassis. Okay, so I'm using short M4 screws for this because they have a bigger head. Alright guys, I explained this in the first 973 build, but I will explain it again. When you put these arms on, like this, you have to use a soldering iron or a drill and drill through or melt the plastic through the holes on this coupler. I didn't create any pre-made holes on these, and that is because these couplers, they almost never have the set screw hole in the same position. Here you can see this one is in the middle of the holes, and this one is straight on top of a hole. So what happens is when you mount these onto the motor shaft, these will stand different from each other, right? Making these holes not line up. So if I had pre-made holes on these and screwed them onto the couplers, the arms would stand like this on the loader. They wouldn't stand like this, they would stand like this. So that's why we have to put them on, melt or drill the holes manually, and then go on from there. I'll take you through the steps. The first step is obviously to put this arm onto the coupler, and the diameter on this edge is the same as the coupler, so make sure that it's on there properly, so it's not sitting like this, or yeah, it should sit in the center. So you put it in the desired position. I can see the set screw under here. It's very important that you can see the set screw. And now I'm going to use my marker and just mark out approximately where the holes are. Should be one there. One here, and one here, approximately. All right. Next step. We mount the arms onto the lifting arm. Do the same on this side. Now on this side I'm going to mount the arms before I mark. Okay, so now we can have a look. We have one hole here, we have one here. So there should be one here, and one here, and one here, approximately. Alright, so now we center this piece. I'm going to use a soldering iron, and the reason for that is because this tip will melt its way through and self-center in the holes on the coupler. There's the hole. So I missed the hole at the beginning, but that's okay. Now I just melt this back. I keep on going. Alright, so that's one side, and I'm now going to drill the holes carefully. And this is a 3mm drill. And I'm drilling all the way through. Careful not to drill through this plate. And now I'm going to put in M4 screws, because the holes on the coupler is M4. And these are M4 by 12, I believe. Yeah. These don't go all the way through, and that's important because you don't want them to hit the wall. So carefully drill or screw them in. So that's one side. Now let's do the other side. Alright, so these are the trackpads that I'll be using on this build. These are entirely 3D printed, as you can see, and they have support materials on them. So I'm going to have to sit down and spend maybe half an hour removing these supports. And they really do sit quite hard on these parts. Yeah. Oh, this is going to be so painful. So 25 minutes later, and I have all of these trackpads laying here. So one side is now finished. I'll do the other one off camera. So before I put the tracks on the chassis, I have to put a drop of glue on each screw on the back side of the screw so that it doesn't back out again. Oh, so I'm about to mount up the tracks, but I noticed that I forgot to put in the screws here. So let's do that. So here you can see that the tracks are mounted up to the chassis and it's looking good. Now you might notice that I'm using the D6 doser tracks on this build. I just wanted this to grip the ground more. And also there's 33 plates on each side, so there's 66 in total on this. Alright, unfortunately it's getting pretty late here, and I think I'm going to cut the video here and continue working on this tomorrow. Now I got pretty far on the build. There's not many parts left to assemble, and there's also electronics and stuff to put in the back here. And also I will put a little more weight in it. It's pretty heavy. Yeah, it's very heavy. And the steel parts really helps with the weight. I can feel that already. I will still put a little weight inside here. And we will assemble the hood and the rest of the chassis tomorrow. Well, that's it for this video, guys. And if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. And I'll see you tomorrow. Bye bye.